So when we talk about the science of mind, and we talk about getting on the spiritual path, and we talk about doing all this spiritual stuff, it sometimes almost sounds like we're either in it or we're not. Like we're either spiritual or still having fun. There is actually space in between. There is a sense with true faith. I've read many times that for true faith, there must be a question. There must be doubt at some level, otherwise you haven't thought this through. So you get in these rooms to question, and I'll just remind you that next week we're going to play our favorite game, which is questions and answers. You know all those questions you got thrown out of Sunday school for? You get to ask them here, and we'll record it, and we'll send it out to the world with an answer. I will remind you it's an answer. It happens to be my answer. And it might even be Ernest Holmes's answer as I understand it. But you still get to take all of those answers and decide how they work for you. Yes? Yes. So next week we get to make Jackson run across the stage and everything else to get everybody their microphone, which is my part of the fun. So I remember hearing from one of my uncles who worked with youth as a Catholic priest about getting the kids up during the retreats, especially before confirmation. There was always a big retreat. And he would get them up at dark 30. And they couldn't kill him because he was a priest, and they'd go to hell because they were Catholic, right? So what he would do is get up. He actually, at one point, he had a recording on something called a tape. Have you guys heard of those, tape cassettes? And he would just hold his arm inside the door and blare bagpipes. And when things started hitting the door, he knew they were up. Or he would go around yelling, "Good morning, happy campers, it's another golden day." And they would say things they're not allowed to say, and then they'd have to go back to confession, and it was awesome. But he would do this practice of having them sit outside, and they would levitate the sun. And every morning it worked. It has never not worked. So our job is simply to have faith that when we go into our spiritual practice and start levitating the sun, or putting it to bed at night, you bracket your day, it works every time. Why? Because we're working with natural laws. We're working with scientific laws. Watch. Gravity. It's a scientific law. Now, did I push that pen down? No, I didn't need to. I can pick it up and defy gravity, but that's a Broadway song, and that's a different talk. But every time I drop this, it will fall to the ground. If I hand it to somebody else and they drop it, it will fall to the ground. Every single time you use a natural law, no matter who you are or where you've been or what other people tell you are, the natural law works. It just does. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to get enough points on your card. You don't have to have enough money or be tall enough or thin enough or smart enough or rich enough. It just works like gravity. And so when we decide to rise and shine, we might have our human doubts about whether we're doing it right. That's okay. That's okay. You can be a spiritual person and be having fun and have questions about whether you're doing it right. Stay in the question. Don't go for the easy answer. Stay in the question. It's a reason to come back next week, right? So the thing is, and this should be the warning label that goes in front of the foundations class, which is starting soon. If you change your thinking, you will change your life. When you change your belief system, when you take a good hard look at your beliefs and decide if you're going to agree with them anymore, you're going to change the way you think. And when you change the way you think and you honestly believe the new thoughts, you have to change your behavior. If I didn't believe in gravity, and I honestly believed it, then I would stop putting gas in my car and I'd just fly here every day. Now, I don't actually believe I can do that, nor do I want to. But what I can do is know, absolutely know, that I am here for a purpose. That each and every one of us is here for a purpose. And that what I do when I show up here, what you do when you show up here, even if you've never been here before, even if you're not sure if you might have accidentally meant to go to a different church and you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about, even if you meant to find a pimple popping video and then instead you got me, whatever. No matter what it was you thought you were here to do, spirit within you is up to something. It is time for you to rise and shine. And we have talked in the past about why it is we avoid it like the plague. There's a couple reasons. One of them, I was doing some research on this. There was a study. Does anyone remember who Kitty Genovese is or was? Okay, Queens, New York. Over the course of half an hour, as she's running in full sight of her neighbors, she was stabbed. And she's screaming for help. And none of her neighbors, none of her 38 neighbors who witnessed it, called 911, reached out to help, did anything. This is not a condemnation of her neighbors. This is a very human response because it became known, once it was studied, as the bystander problem. As it turns out, if you are alone in a building with one other person and that person screams for help, you have an 85% chance that you're going to get up and go help them. If there's 4 people in the building, it turns out there's only a 35% chance that somebody will go help. What's the difference? Because I know we're good people. I know humans are God incarnate and want to do good things. The difference is we assume somebody else is going to do it. We assume somebody else will rise and shine. Because many of us were raised with a certain don't stick your neck out, don't be too obvious, don't hog the limelight, don't get a big head, don't think you're the one who can do all of this stuff philosophy. I am here to tell you that is as fake as American cheese, which is not even cheese, it's pasteurized, processed cheese food product, if you read the label. It is simply not the truth, but because we want to work within a society, many of us have swallowed the idea that it is not ours to rise or shine. It is not okay for us to be special in the way that we alone are special. It is somehow not okay to take the last cookie because, we're saving everybody else from the last cookie or the carbs or whatever. I don't know. We are taught not to be selfish, right? I am going to ask you to consider capitalizing that S in selfish and be as selfish as you can possibly be. Define yourself by the divine within you, your capital S self. And then you can tell people that you're getting your big S up and going. And you're leaving your little s out of the way. So, there is a book out by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, and I've referred to it many times, but I'm going to go over it again today. What he says is that there are 4 levels at which we live and do business. The first one is the level of incompetence. Imagine me doing brain surgery or trying to hang drywall. I don't know what I'm doing. I probably shouldn't be trying to do it. There are other people who would be much better at doing this, but That is my level of incompetence. If I can identify it, I can just step away from the brain surgery and not try and do it myself. Believe me, your insurance will not cover it. Then there's the zone of competence. For years, I did data entry as a clerk. I'm really good at typing. So, somebody just agreed with me. That's lovely. So I can type. That's cool. Is it the best use of my time? Maybe not, because lots of people can type. Lots of people are really good at doing data entry and being positively persnickety about making sure that every comma is in the right place. Lots of people can do it. I can do it for myself, and it might be worth doing for myself, but it's not really gonna make me feel like I've lived a meaningful life if that's what I spend the rest of my life doing. Then there's the zone of excellence. The zone of excellence is generally what we end up doing for a career, most of us. In Jackson's case, he was a teacher at the local high school for a long time. He was one of the favorite teachers of the local high school. He actually was that teacher. I had one of those teachers. His name was Mr. Cahoon in my high school, but everybody would kind of like hang out in his office if we could in between classes because we liked him, and he was on our side. And he would, Mr. Cahoon, I don't know if Jackson had an office to hang out in, but Mr. Roush was voted the favorite teacher many years. He was an excellent teacher. But if you're willing to recognize the spirit within you, if you're willing to rise and shine, you will find what's called your zone of genius. I would say that's where his zone is, over by the piano. Sorry, keyboard. Sorry, I still have cassettes. Actually, I could even say I still have CDs these days. So that jump from the zone of excellence to the zone of genius is where you get to rise and shine, where you get to use all those natural laws when you do your affirmations and you do your prayers and all of those things we teach in foundation class. This is a great big hint. I'm just saying, you can do it online, so no matter where you are, you can take this class. It should come with a seatbelt, but you can do it. If you are willing to face that gap between your zone of excellence and your zone of genius, you will live a life beyond your wildest dreams. For each person, it's going to look different. For each person, it's going to take a different motivation. It's going to take a different switch in your thinking. It's going to take something, and the practitioners can help you with that. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself. There is something called, in that gap, called an ULP, ULP. Kind of because that's the sound you make when you realize you're facing it, is ULP. It's an upper limit problem. When your life is starting to get so good that it's a little scary and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop and for it all to go away, because somebody's got to figure out that that wasn't really your lottery ticket, when you face an ULP, what we often do is sabotage and go back to our zone of excellence. Because that's where people like us, because we do our job there and we do it well. That's where we know how to live there, and it's pretty well defined. If you're going to go to your zone of genius, you have to push beyond what you thought you deserved. You have to push beyond who you think you are and start accepting that there is a Christ living in you that wants to go out into the world and be a beneficial presence. There is a God being living inside your skin that has its own genius. Now, when we think of genius, I often think of anybody with an IQ score of 140 or above. It's an old way of measuring intelligence. There's controversy around it now. But another way of talking about it, a genius is also the guardian spirit of a place, institution, or something like that. What if your genius, the genius that lives in you, is the guardian spirit of the life that's waiting for you? What if your guardian spirit, the genius that lives within you, is just waiting for you to listen to it? It's also the distinctive character or spirit as of a nation, period, or language. What if your genius, that thing that is only true of you, that thing that only you can do the way you do it, is exactly what this nation requires, this world requires to heal climate change, to heal any kind of discord between races, between genders, between any two groups, chocolate and vanilla eaters, whatever. What if it is your genius that if you will stand and live from that, if you will rise and allow yourself to shine, allowing your genius to shine through you, what if that is exactly what the world has been waiting for? Can you imagine if Mother Teresa decided to just be a cloistered nun and accept that she was turned down a lot by the Catholic Church when she wanted to start her hospices? Can you imagine if she just decided, well, I'll just stay in my zone of excellence and do, this little thing that I'm doing? If Muhammad had decided that he's not going to accept the Quran and recite it and write it down because he was more or less illiterate. Moses tried really, really hard to get out of being Moses. He argued with the burning bush. If I'm faced with a burning bush, I don't know that arguing is what comes to mind for me. But one of the things he said was, I have a speech impediment. What do you mean I'm supposed to go talk to Pharaoh? Do you know there's a warrant for my arrest out there for murder? I can't go back to Egypt. All of these great beings are no different than you and me, except that they gave themselves permission to be magnificent. They gave themselves permission to live their life all the way up to the edges, to take up space, to take up time, to go do that wild and crazy thing that Spirit's been asking them to do, and trust and believe that the laws of nature themselves are going to make it work out. There's a story from World War II that a particular church was bombed, and they had this gorgeous statue of Jesus the Christ. For those of you who don't know us well or who are new to this teaching, I say Jesus the Christ because Christ is a title. It is not his last name. Every single one of us is a Christ. We have been anointed by the divine to do a particular thing, which is live our lives as us, just as we are and just as we are not. So there was this beautiful statue of Jesus who allowed his Christhood to show up and change the world. And the church was bombed. There was a lot of damage. And when the soldiers came in afterwards, they were trying to fix the statue because it had lost its hands and feet. It had chunks missing. And they couldn't get large enough pieces to put them back. So instead, they just kind of leaned it in a corner and wrote a sign that said, I have no hands but your hands, and no feet but your feet. Jewel wrote a song that says, we are God's hands. God can only do for us what we allow to be done through us. Do you want world peace? Okay. Were you thinking about it for a second? Do we want to see all of the kids in Yavapai County being fed? Yes. The people on Digital World. I'm willing to believe that somebody within your 5-mile radius is living in poverty. Are you willing to see them be as rich as you want to be for yourself? There is a tradition, as it was explained to me in Islam, that you cannot go on the sacred pilgrimage, the Hajj. There are some people who will say, it doesn't matter if you have the money or the time, you cannot go on a real Hajj if anybody within a 1 mile radius is in need. And so there is something about all of us get to rise and shine. All of us get to be, are eligible for the good that we want for ourselves. Everybody in this community is the Spirit of God itself and has an absolute destiny to shine and allow that magnificence to be seen. Just because, somebody took the last donut doesn't mean they are now suddenly not God in your world. I keep thinking about that thing about if you don't know love, you don't know God. And if you're going to the temple and your brother has something against you, and I'm just going to totally misquote that, but if your brother has something against you, put down your sacrifice. Don't do the ritual and the outward signs of spirituality. Go back and make things right with whatever human you need to make things right with. Because if you don't love that person, you don't actually love God. And if you don't love God, you don't love yourself. This is one of those weird circular arguments where it sounds like I'm being all spiritual and high and holy by saying you need to love one another in order to love God, in order to love yourself. Has anyone noticed that it's entirely selfish of me? And it's in my best interest to love everyone because then I get to go home and actually sleep at night and not be up at 3 a.m. going, oh my God, what else did I do wrong? Allow me to make another list of my sins. We get to be magnificent because we already are. We get to be the Messiah in our own life. We get to be the enlightened one. We already are. The only decision you get to make is when you're going to admit to it. And the thing is, as the Rabbi Hillel the Elder said, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? We need to be for ourselves, capital S. We need to be for each other as a community. And we need to do it now because this is the only time we have to rise and shine. And so we go to prayer. And I always pray from here, if I can, because we are equal here. I am one among many. I just happen to have the mic right now. And so join me in consciousness. Go within in whatever way works for you, whether you just stare with a soft gaze or you close your eyes. Because in this moment, God is. That thing we call God, for want of a better word. Life, love, power, joy, peace. The infinite good, the infinite and eternal life is fully present in this time and this place and as each and every one of us. All of the joy, all of the love, all of the good that can possibly exist already exists in the mind of God. And in this moment, we are all eligible to experience it, to allow our faith in natural laws to work. And so I release the belief that says we have to be less than, that we have to play small, that we shouldn't offend by thinking too much of ourselves, that somehow we should be poor, not just in spirit, but in pocketbook, that somehow it's not okay to thrive right now. I am throwing all of that away as bad information that is no longer of any use to anyone if it ever was. And I am standing in the light of truth here and now and declaring and witnessing the truth that my inner eye sees, which is the glory of every single soul here and within the sound of my voice. It is absolutely our divine birthright to live our greatest life, to live from our genius, to be the one that we at least have been waiting for, and to get to the end of our physical life and say, wow, I did it. I did all of it. I know and claim that each of us living from that beautiful truth is a beneficial presence, and we cannot help but heal everybody we come in contact with. We teach them how to live as a light, and they too get to shine. And so I claim that for this world right here and now. A new infection, an infection of light, an infection of magnificence that cannot be stopped. It's a whole new variant. And I claim it for all of us now, with a grateful heart, knowing that natural law is already moving this truth I have witnessed into form. I bless it all and call it good, and so it is. Every part of our lives is spiritual, every action, every reaction. And so just as we took that song into our bodies with the hand motions, we take our spiritual truth, we take natural law and apply it to our finances. And so this is the part of the service where once upon a time we would have passed a basket. So if you are online, this is your chance to text a tithe or to give via the donation page. If you are physically present, again, as you go out on the left-hand side, there is a table. There's a very sparkly gold box that the kids decorated for us once upon a time. And that is where you put your tithe or donation or offering. What we do here is remember that this is a spiritual act. It is an act of power and it is an act of prosperity. And so we take that gift, holding it over our hearts or holding our hands over our hearts and say this: divine love in and through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, life. And thank you, Agustinos, for coming back up.